Hello, I'm Brian LaBelle here at the Craft Brewers Conference in Minneapolis. We're sitting in front of a killer demo demonstrating the various material types and how plastics outperform the metals, and not all plastics are created equal. But I wanted to talk with Dan because Dan's got quite a story with GF Piping Systems. When did you start with GF Piping Systems, Dan?
1988. I thought I would be working for the company for 2 to 4 years. That's
It came 2 to 4 decades plus.
Yeah. So I started my career for Georg Fischer in Sweden. Headquarters told me that there was a position in US. 2001, I moved with my family here.
2001, more than 20 years. So right around the time that you left Sweden to come to the United States, up until that time, you had experience selling what for general cooling applications?
We sold ABS and we sold polyethylene for glycol and chilled water. We were already in that business, and the trick is always to insulate the system. So we needed insulation. That's what we need. And that's when Georg Fischer started to develop the system.
So thermoplastics do have some inherent insulating properties by themselves, and so there are some cooling applications that don't require insulation, but the majority of the intense cooling applications, they do. So you always have to post-insulate.
Always insulate.
Always post-insulate. And so right around the time that you were leaving, GF was leaving Sweden to come to the US, GF in Europe was developing this pre-insulated piping system.
They in fact installed some of the installations in the 90s already. So end of the 90s, that's when some of the first generation was installed. We had some pharmaceutical places in Denmark, for example, that was installed with the whole thing. And then we tweaked the system a little bit more, and yes, then this system came out.
And so you suggested when you came over, as a growth opportunity for GF Piping Systems in the Americas, hey, why not bring this CoolFit product over, this pre-insulated piping system? And then the question is, well, where do you sell it?
Yeah.
Who's going to use this pre-insulated piping system?
Exactly.
And what was your answer to that?
So we had cooling, and what you use this is such a big area. And when I started, I was alone to running it. So you need focus. You can't run here, because everywhere.
What you're saying is there are cooling applications in many different market segments,
yes,
all across the industry.
So we started with supermarkets at that time because they did secondary cooling, and it was one OEM in specific that did it, and we really worked hard with them to get in, and they liked this. First they said they didn't care. And I said, you know what, here is your machinery, here is your cooling objects, you produce this, you produce this, and you don't care what's in between. So if this not performing, you have a problem. And that makes you look bad. And then they come back and said, we thought about this, you're right. And yes, then they started to promote this, and they saw their performance of their equipment be much better. And when we were up to selling about 100, 120 supermarkets a year, that's when I started to look, okay, this is rolling now, this is going, let's take the next segment in the whole thing.
The next area of focus.
Yes.
And for you, the idea was?
Breweries.
Breweries.
Because the craft breweries had started to take off. Breweries need cooling. So 2005, I did a small installation, but 2006, I really started promoting. And that's when we approached Highland Brewing Company. I'm talking we as Georg Fischer, but it was me running around like crazy and see different customers. Dogfish was the other one. And with Dogfish, they asked me, do we have any brewery references in US? And I said, nope, we don't.
No. So this was 2006?
2006.
How many microbreweries do you think there were in the country at that time?
It was 1,048.
1,048, and we didn't have any references. We were just getting this business off the ground in the US.
Yeah.
I remember you would keep a spreadsheet, and I remember month in and month out, and quarter in and quarter out, and year in and year out, the number of satisfied customers and GF CoolFit installations just grew. So tell us a little bit about that growth.
We can take an example. We're looking at this exhibition now, and I think how many aisles do we
giant.
have?
Yeah.
It's big. You need days to walk through the whole thing. When I started, I went to my first craft brew exhibition. You could walk the exhibition floor in less than 2 hours. That's how tiny it was.
And talk to every exhibitor.
Yep, it's been growing like crazy. And for us, we were growing the business by having happy customers. That's been the thing. Happy customers, as long as we have happy customers and they start talking about it, that's how it was spinning off. And if you look on Dogfish Head, they've been growing. We had the first expansion within 1 year. Our first header was 2-inch. Next time they called me, how is your stock situation? Oh, it's good. Oh, don't answer before you have seen my email. And then he came back and it was 6-inch headers. And we ended up flying it in because I said we were good. So we have done with Dogfish now up to date, I think we're up in 16 or 18 expansions.
Wow.
With Dogfish.
And what is the size of our portfolio now, the smallest to the largest in CoolFit?
We go from 1 inch and our standard range is up to 18 inch and our extended range is up to 48 inch.
48 inch pre-insulated
48 inch. We have grown tremendously.
Yeah, no kidding.
And we have gone from having no references to we have over somewhere, I don't know exact number, but we are between 900 to 1,000 customers.
900 to 1,000 breweries are using GF Piping Systems CoolFit.
In North America.
And how many, approximately, I know there are probably many people walking around this conference that could answer this question within 10, but approximately how many breweries are there?
8,000.
Approximately 8,000 breweries in the U.S., and we are in maybe 1,000 of them. And so we still have a lot of upside growth potential. And the product really performs quite well. What does CoolFit do particularly well compared to other piping system solutions that may be selected for cooling applications in breweries?
It's maintenance free. You install it and you forget about it.
What kind of maintenance do the other systems suffer? What do they require?
Because they get mold on it, they have vapor seal that's broken, they have moist insulation, they need to be re-insulated, they need to be cleaned in a different way, and so on. There is so much problems, and they have ice buildup. There's so much you need. It's an upkeep, and you have corrosion of the pipe.
Yeah.
And you have not only corrosion on the inside of the pipe, mostly on the outside.
So it's all about minimizing or eliminating condensation.
Yeah, and then our bonus is also we are lighter in weight, much lighter in weight, 60% lighter than conventional material, and we are way quicker to install.
You don't have the post-operation of first installing the piping system and then going back and putting the insulation on afterwards.
Yeah.
Outstanding. Well, where do we go from here?
There is so much bad system out there, so there is
retrofit opportunities.
Retrofit.
New breweries, expansions of existing breweries.
If you look in the brewery business, you have the small ones that in the beginning thought that the cheapest one is the way to go, that realized that was not the way to go, that became very expensive for them. Because if your system's sweating and icing up, you pay the cost for the energy bill every month.
Yeah.
Your chiller unit's gonna work much harder. And you're gonna pay that in an electrical bill each month. And you get more and more people who wants to concentrate on brew phenomenal craft beers that don't want to bother about upkeeping with the glycol system and so on. So what we try to teach is the correct way and install a system, the correct layouts, the correct efficient systems and so on. So there is still, we try to educate, that's a thing that's very important for us.
Does CoolFit also give the brewer an opportunity to control temperature more tightly with more precision?
Yes.
And thereby enabling a more consistent batch after batch after batch, a more consistent flavor?
Yes.
With these artisan craft brews?
We have one of the most popular and most highly rated breweries in US that swear over our system that their success is to the rapid cooling and the precise cooling of their fluid, thanks to our system. They say that they would not be able to produce these phenomenal beers without us.
If your system is not vapor tight, does not have that efficiency, then you're from a temperature control application standpoint, you're always going to be chasing.
The very common mistake people do, they don't insulate it correctly, or they have weak spots where it's bare and you see ice, moisture, sweating, but also they don't dimension it correctly. So if your pipe is too small, you can't get the flow out.
Yeah.
You need to get the flow out.
Right. Well, let's talk about valves. We've talked about the piping and the pre-insulated piping system and the advantages of that, but the CoolFit system from GF also includes valves.
It's a complete system.
It's a complete system. And the alternative on the other systems would be solenoid valves?
Yes.
And there's a pretty big difference in the way a solenoid valve will perform versus a ball valve.
Yes.
Help us understand that.
So with a ball valve, first of all, you have a full bore through the valve. That means that you have no flow restrictions, which is a huge help. You have a very hefty flow restriction on a solenoid. To describe this, if you put a 1-inch valve on a 1-inch pipe, if you really don't want the flow restriction with a solenoid, you need to go up to a 2-inch solenoid.
Interesting. Versus a ball valve, because when a ball valve is open, it's completely open, there is no pressure drop,
Yes.
and you get full flow through the ball valve.
Also, when you then close the valve with a solenoid, you get a rapid closing, and that means that you get a water hammer.
Yeah.
And you get stress in the system. With a ball valve, you have about 5 seconds from fully open to fully closed, slow closing, no water hammers.
Much more gentle operation.
Yes.
Contributes to the long-term
Yeah.
zero maintenance performance of the CoolFit.
And also, if a solenoid have all these small servo channels and so on, and they get stuck with debris from the install and so on, and then suddenly they don't work. That problem you don't have with the ball valve. Another thing is, if you need to service a solenoid, you need to have a manual valve on both sides to service it. With the ball valve, the actuated ball valve, you don't have this problem because you have manual override on the actuator, and if something happens, a lightning or whatever, you just take off the actuator, put on a new one. Or repair the old one.
Serviceability.
Without affecting the system.
Outstanding. Well, thank you for that history, and thank you for all your work developing this business for GF Piping System. It's grown into quite an impressive portfolio
Yeah,
of
it's been
products for
fun.
us.
It's been a lot of fun.
Congratulations for your success, and thanks for all you've done for GF.
Thank you.
Continue to do.
Yeah.
Dan Stromberg, everybody. Thank you.